are you ready? Is Sally ready to afford to do what she wants to do in retirement when she wants to do it? So let's start to kind of dive into that, right? So she's got to first understand, okay, what's that going to cost? What is it going to cost for me to split time in two places, travel back and forth, right? Travel to the different vineyards in the Pacific Northwest, right? All that. So one of the best ways of understanding what your life in retirement is going to cost is to first have a really good grasp of what your life today costs. And this slide gives us a quick little outline of a pretty darn accurate way of estimating what your life today costs. So if you start with your gross pre-retirement income, and if you're married or have a partner or spouse that you both have income, then to do that gross total household pre-retirement income, subtract from that payroll taxes, so the 6.2% Social Security tax and 1.45% Medicare tax, because we don't pay payroll tax on retirement income. Next, subtract out what you're saving for retirement, what you're currently putting into your 401k or into IRAs, because presumably once you're in retirement, you're no longer saving for retirement, right? So now if you've subtracted out what you're currently paying in payroll taxes, what you're currently saving, what's left, state and federal taxes included, is what you're spending, right? That's what you're living off of. So if we look at the examples down below, so let's just take for a moment someone whose total household pre-retirement income is $90,000. We subtract out from that the payroll taxes, we subtract out from that, in this example, they're saving 10% of their income for retirement, or $9,000. So right now, their life basically costs $74,115. Right, so that gives her, Sally, if that's her case, a good idea of what her life today costs and what her life in retirement is going to cost. Now, in some instances, you may think to yourself, well, I have a mortgage now, but that mortgage is going to be paid off by the time I retire. Excellent. Then you could subtract that out, right? There may be other things. You may have certain expenses now that you're not going to have in retirement. So everybody's situation is a little different, but this is just a great way to kind of kickstart that thought process of what is it going to cost to live in retirement. Now, on the flip side, how are you going to fund it? Where are the sources of income for retirement? Now, there's the old kind of outdated analogy of the three-legged stool of retirement. One leg being Social Security, one being our own savings, and the third leg being pensions. And the reason why I say that it's outdated is pensions are going away, as many of you are aware. Now, here in the D.C. area, we see a little bit more frequent folks who have pensions given the federal government or state employees. But today we're going to focus on the two legs of the stool that really apply to everyone, and that's Social Security and our own savings for retirement into a 401k, for example. So first with Social Security, I always like to point out that I give two separate presentations, full presentations just on Social Security, and today we have one slide, I believe. So obviously we're just going to touch on the tip of the iceberg, as they say, but I think this slide really gets to perhaps the most important point, and that is, first, that Social Security is a valuable benefit for retirement, and two, it can be really valuable if you're able to delay when you start Social Security. So let me get into that, but first let me also quickly address the elephant in the room, that is the financial stability of Social Security. Now, there just seems to be a constant barrage of media reports claiming that Social Security is going broke, the trust fund is going to run out of money. I am fully confident that Social Security is going to continue to be a very important source of retirement income for you and I. Now, are there going to be some changes to the rules? Are they going to potentially push back the retirement dates? Are they going to maybe lower the cost of living adjustment? There are definitely going to be some changes to the rules. But Social Security is going to, I fully expect Social Security is going to still be around by the time I need retirement income from Social Security. So under current law, we can file for Social Security as early as age 62, and we can delay it to as late as age 70. Now, we're probably most familiar with the age, what's considered our full retirement age. So depending on our year of birth under current laws, our full retirement age is somewhere between 66 and 67. Now, I was born in 1977, so under current law, my full retirement age is 67. But as I mentioned before, I think one of the changes they're going to make is they're going to push back that retirement date. So I fully expect that someday Congress will make that change, and it'll be signed into law by the president, and my full retirement age is probably going to be 70, 71, 72, somewhere in that range. But if we speak for a moment right now, and we use an example of someone whose full retirement age is 66. So as you can see on this chart, they have an estimated benefit of $2,000 per month. Now, if we back that down, remember I mentioned that you can file for benefits as early as age 62, but if you do, that benefit's going to be reduced. So for someone with a full retirement age of 66, that reduction is a full and permanent 25%. So in this case, if this person files for Social Security at 62, their benefit's going to be $1,500 a month. So if we use that as kind of our baseline, right, or our 0 point, because that's the earliest we can file. But if they wait until 63, their benefit's going to go 7% higher. If they wait to 64, it'll be 15% higher, and so forth, until you see all the way down to the bottom. If this person is able to wait all the way until age 70, that Social Security benefit is going to be 76% higher. Now, that doesn't even take into account any cost of living increases along the way. Now, if anyone listening to this broadcast can tell me where they can get a guaranteed 7 to 8% rate of return, please call me and let me know. But that's what you're getting here with Social Security. If you can afford to wait, you're getting a guaranteed 7 to 8% per year. Now, in this current ultra-low interest rate environment, that is honestly the best deal out there. So it is very valuable if you can afford to wait to file for Social Security. We're going to talk about some of the ways that you might be able to position yourself to be able to do that. All right. So this next piece is, this slide is entitled Safe Withdrawal Rate, and what we're getting at here is how do you start generating a monthly income from your total savings, right? All the money that you're contributing to 401ks and IRAs and so on for retirement, right? Because that really is the bigger challenge. You know, Social Security is what it is, as they say. The government's just, once you make that election, the government's going to send you your check every month. There's no more decisions for you to make. But when you're trying to create your own monthly income from just a lump sum of retirement assets that you've spent a lifetime saving, that's where it gets a little more tricky. So here's where the safe withdrawal rate comes in. And some of you may have heard of the 4% rule. So that's probably the most commonly referred to kind of rule of thumb. And what it means is that and let's just walk through this example, probably the best way to do it. So on the slide, you'll see that this person is projected to have a total retirement savings of $600,000. So by the time they retire, they expect to have $600,000 saved. Now, if they take out 4% of that, their first year of retirement, so in this example, that'd be $24,000. And then in year 2, as you go down below, they give themselves a cost of living increase. Way to increase that income to try to keep up with inflation. So they started with $24,000 that they took out of their total retirement savings in year 1, and then they increased it in year 2 by 4.5%. That's what we use in our office for our long-term expected rate of inflation. So that second year they get $25,080, and then the third year they increase it again by 4.5%. So the third year they take out $26,209, and that has been historically tested, analyzed, sliced and diced, and then under all kinds of different retirement scenarios over a 30-year retirement window. If you take out an initial withdrawal rate of 4%, you can feel confident that you're not going to outlive your money. Your portfolio is going to last at least as long as you do. Now you can imagine that, let's just say you work longer than typical. Let's say somebody worked until 75, right? And they didn't need to start tapping into their retirement savings until they were 75. And you could argue that they may not have a 30-year retirement window at that point, right? That more realistically, you could say, okay, maybe they'll have a 20-year retirement window from 75 to, say, 95. Well, if that's the case, then you can imagine that initial withdrawal rate could be higher than 4%. And on the flip side, if somebody retires early, say like Daniel's dad retires at, say, 55 or 56, well, that person may have a much longer retirement window, more years to have to fund, so that initial withdrawal rate may be lower than 4%. So now we just add the three legs of the stool together, right? Or whatever legs are relevant to you. So I encourage you to go to ssa.gov, so that's the Social Security Administration website, ssa.gov. You can look up your projected Social Security benefits. Then you can add to that the safe withdrawal rate, or take 4% of what your projected total retirement savings is going to be. And then add to it, if you're going to have a pension, what that projected pension would be, if you're going to have income from, rental properties, or if you plan, to work part-time, anything. And you just add those numbers together, and you'll have a really pretty good idea as to how much income you expect to have in retirement, right? So now you can balance that with the earlier exercise of what your current life costs and what you expect your life in retirement to cost. And if this slide and that earlier slide are imbalanced, then hey, you're on track. Or maybe the cost side is much higher than the projected side that you're going to have. So now you need to start thinking through, okay, what are some of the mid-course adjustments that you can make to get it in balance? And we're going to talk about some more of those. But first, I want to talk about two essential pillars when thinking about retirement planning. And the first one is basically life expectancy. And the reality is, for some reason, most Americans underestimate how long we're going to live. Not sure what drives that, but most people, and we see this when talking with clients, is people just tend to say, oh, I'll never live to 90 or 95, right? But the reality is that currently, just as one example, if you're a married couple, both age 65, there's a 25% chance that one of you is going to make it to age 95. I mean, that's a fairly high probability, in my opinion. So it's important to be realistic, and probably even more important, err on the side of being conservative when it comes to thinking about how long you're going to live, and in turn, how many years your retirement plan needs to fund. And then similarly is, don't lose track of inflation. And it's real basic in concept, but it's one of those sort of theories that a lot of folks just don't quite fully grasp, right? And I think the easiest way to summarize it is, stuff costs more today than it did 20 years ago or even 10 years ago, right? With a few exceptions, maybe flat screen TVs cost less today than they did, but pretty much everything else, right, costs more today than it used to. And so life is going to cost more in the future than it does today. So if you use our example, if we think a long-term rate of inflation of 4.5%, so if you use that and you apply the old rule of 72, if any of you are familiar with that, which says that if you divide 72 by the rate of inflation, or in our case 4.5%, you get 16 in our example. So basically, if your life today costs, let's just say $50,000, in 16 years, you're going to have to double that just to keep up with the current cost of living. All right, so in 16 years, you're going to need $100,000 of income just to maintain your current lifestyle, right? And so then another 16 years, you can double that again, right? So that's the rule of 72, but it's just one of those things that you have to take into account when thinking about, how am I going to afford my retirement? So another important consideration is, right, how do I invest during retirement? All right, so while we're working, we're saving into our 401k. Many of us, we don't necessarily pay a ton of attention to it. We prefer when it goes up. We try not to look at it when it goes down, right? That might be a tendency for some of you. But we kind of get it gets smoothed over even when the markets are selling off and our accounts are going down, because it may still look like it's going up, because remember, we're still contributing to it, right? We're still putting money in every month or every pay period. And so what happens, and I'm sure many of you are aware of this, right? When we get to retirement and we're no longer backfilling from our income and our savings, we generally need to take less risk from our investments, right? We can't afford to take as many big body blows, if you will, to our investments. So, and I'm just speaking in very general terms right now. Ultimately, it's important to sit down with your 401k advisor from AFS, or if you work with a personal financial planner, right, to know what's right for you. But generally speaking, you want to become more conservative with your overall investments as you get closer to retirement and into retirement. So the one kind of a circle here of the Venn diagram that I want to focus on for a moment is this notion of working enough to cover the gap, right? So what that can do, it can help us on both fronts, right? Both kind of on the soft side of retirement and the harder sort of financial side of retirement. So on the soft side, right, if we keep working, we stay engaged, we still can go see our friends at work, or right, stay challenged, keep our mind active, our body active, right? It can be a really good thing to keep working in some capacity, whether it's switching to part-time or even volunteering, right? But if you're able to stay engaged and earn enough money to break even, right, to at least just cover your monthly expenses, right? Because as we get older, if you're able to keep saving, great. But as you get closer to that kind of transition away from the full speed ahead kind of full-time work, making the high income, and if you just start kind of phasing that in and working enough to cover your expenses, then the two things that allows you to do is it allows you to delay starting Social Security, right? If you don't need Social Security and you're working enough to cover your expenses, then you could potentially defer that Social Security to as late as age 70, get that guaranteed 7 to 8% return, all the way up to as high as potentially 76% higher benefit. Right? If you can defer that all the way to 70, then lock in that highest benefit for the rest of your life with the cost of living on top of that, right? Income that's guaranteed, you can't outlive. That's really valuable. And the other thing is you might be able to defer when you start tapping into your savings, right? So if you're able to defer, say, from 65 to 70, right? And you're able to cut down a potential retirement window from 30 to even 25 years, right? Then you can increase that safe withdrawal rate that we talked about potentially.